I'm so excited for today's guest. He's a world-renowned human behavior expert. He's a multiple best-selling author. He's appeared on the blockbuster hit movie, The Secret, worked alongside Hugh Jackman, Ringo Starr, and has also appeared on the Oprah Winfrey Show. I want to welcome Dr. John Demartini. Welcome to the show, John.
Yes, thank you for having me, Sean. Thank you.
Amazing. So, John, we were just chatting, and you're actually on a ship right now, and so we were a little delayed, but so fortunate to have you join us a little late than never. So, awesome. Thanks for being here.
Yes, we had a glitch on the internet. We've got great bandwidth, but somehow there was a glitch, and they finally solved it. Looks like I'm going to be able to be on again. So I'm so grateful. Thank you.
Fantastic.
Thanks for being patient.
Absolutely, John. When we talk about human potential, because this is a level up show, and it's all about how do we achieve more success, but also with balance, with happiness. And you know, the one thing that I love about your story and what you're doing is in working with human potential. It's where I started, meaning I was frustrated I came from sort of struggling with money, struggling in relationships, and even in my health. So when I hear human potential, I'd like to know, just in your words, what does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, when I think of that term, I think of Aristotle. And he talked about the difference between potential and actual. So we have a vast potential, but is it become actualized? Have you actually achieved what your potential is? Or are you achieving parts of what you've actually pursued? So actualizing it, self-actualization that Maslow described in his personality motivation was the actualization of our potential. And he differentiated that, Aristotle. So the human potential movement is that we have a vast potential sitting inside us, and each of us are, manifesting varying degrees of that. And maybe I could go through an idea on what makes that difference. Why do some do it when others don't?
I would love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I've been in the, quote, human potential movement and teaching. This is my 50th year of teaching, so I've been doing it a bit. And I have observed, people of all different sorts of fulfillment and achievement levels, from people that have done extremely amazing stuff to more moderate stuff. And one thing I'm certain is a factor is the individual value system that an individual holds. Each of us have a set of priorities that we live in our life. And whatever that set of priorities or set of values or things that are most least important in their life is unique to them and fingerprint specific to them. And it's evolving, changing. And anytime we're doing what's highest on that list of values, we are spontaneously inspired from within to fulfill it. But anytime we're doing things lower on those value hierarchies, we require more extrinsic motivation to get us to do it. For instance, a young boy will have a hierarchy of values, and his highest value may be video games.
Yep.
Or soccer. And if it's video games, you do not need to extrinsically motivate him to do it. You don't have to go to Johnny, go do your video game. If you don't do it, I'm going to punish you. And if you want to get to eat tonight, you got to go do your video game. We don't need that kind of extrinsic motivation. The boy is spontaneously inspired from within to do his video games and doesn't need to be reminded. And you won't be able to pull him away from it, because something that's intrinsically driven is something you love doing.
Yes.
Now, but if you asked him to do his homework, his chores, clean his room, he'll procrastinate, hesitate, and frustrate. And you'll need an external motivation. If you clean your room, you'll get to play video. If you don't clean your room, you won't get to play video. So extrinsic motivation is a sign of a non-intrinsic value. And so people who are looking for motivation and looking for somebody to envy and trying to be like or whatever, these are all external motivations.
Right.
Identifying what's highest on your values, highest in priorities, the thing you spontaneously are inspired to do, the thing you're spontaneously disciplined, reliable, and focused on, and setting sail as captain of your ship and master of your fate there will differentiate the high achievers and the moderate achievers, I guarantee you. Because anytime you go after things low on your values and you need greater degrees of external motivation, you have friction, not fuel. You have fractionation, not integration. And you end up multitasking instead of single supertasking. And you now have inefficiencies. And you need some sort of outside incentives all the time. I don't need an outside motivation to teach and research. I've been doing it 50 years, almost 50 years. I love it. I'm just as inspired by that as I was when I was 17 when I discovered what it was. But many people have a set of values that they're unaware of. They're comparing themselves to people they envy, and they put them on a pedestal. And anytime you put somebody above you, you'll inject their values into your life. And the way you know you're doing it is you'll say, I should, I ought to, I'm supposed to, I got to, I have to, I must, I need to. Imperative language is a sign of an injected value of some outer authority that you minimize yourself to. And anytime you have that, you have a conflict between your natural intrinsic calling and all these expectations that you think that society is expecting from you because you're fearing rejection from people that you put on a pedestal. So imagine yourself walking in a mall and you see somebody that's more intelligent, you see more successful, and you see more wealth, a better stable relationship, more socially savvy and connected, more physically fit, more inspired and spiritual. The moment you minimize yourself to any of those people, all of their values are going to be infiltrating you, and you're going to be fearing not fitting into that group. And you're going to cloud the clarity of your mission, which is spontaneously trying to express itself in your life. Finding out what that highest value is, setting sail on that, prioritizing your life, and delegating all else and saying no to all extrinsic, expectations liberates. And it makes a difference on the high achievers, I guarantee you.
Wow. Well, that's a great opening statement right there, John. That's incredible. So what I'm hearing you say is that we all have something unique inside of us. You mentioned that fingerprint, and to really come into alignment and discover what that is gonna dissolve a lot of the resistance that we fight, drain our energy, cause unhappiness, and so many other things like, wealth issues or health disease, right? Is that what I hear you saying ultimately?
Exactly. When we identify what's truly highest in value, and prioritize our life, if we don't fill our day with the highest priority actions that inspire us spontaneously, our day fills up with low priority distractions that don't. And when we fill it with the highest priority actions that inspire us, the blood glucose oxygen goes into the forebrain, the medial prefrontal cortex, which is the executive center, which allows us to master our life and take command and live by design, not duty. But if we are comparing ourselves to other people instead of comparing our actions to our own highest values, and we subordinate to other people and inject their values and cloud the clarity of this, we're going to be doing things lower on our value, devalue ourselves, and feel self-depreciated, which makes us brain offload decisions to other people, and we become followers and sheep instead of shepherds, and become borrowed visionaries instead of unborrowed visionaries. And that holds us back from our potential. We have a potential, but we're not actualizing it. It's spontaneous action from the most intrinsic value that leads to self-actualization.
Wow. And, I love that, John, because I can automatically see how with that way of living, not being actualized, how we can actually choose relationships that may not serve us, how we might go and try and force the money to come to us because it's just not flowing naturally. And it can actually keep us in that lower or victim state, because now we're blaming the other people in our lives that we're not being happy. But I hear you say that we have this power. Like I and I alone can change my circumstances no matter where I am?
We have control over three things in our life.
Okay.
Our sensory neuron perceptions, our interneuron decisions, and our motor neuron actions. That's it. Anything that's a goal that you set that's not one of those three things, you don't have control over. You don't have control of what people do, but you have control of how you perceive it, what you decide to do with it, and how you act on it. That you have control of. So you're never a victim of history.
Right.
You can be a master of destiny. But the moment you create a separation in causality and you blame things on the outside, you're going to look for solutions on the outside and disempower your life. So the individual who's wise will go, whatever's happening to me, how is it on the way, not in the way? How is it helping me fulfill my highest value? If you ask that question and answer it with the accountability, there's nothing in your way. Right. There's just things on the way. And then you build momentum, not friction, fuel, not frustration. But what people do is that anytime they subordinate to somebody and put them on a pedestal and minimize themselves and are too humble to admit that what they see in them inside themselves, they're going to play small and they're going to inject those values. They're going to cloud the clarity of their own mission. And anytime they superordinate and look down on people and resent people and go into pride and go, I'm too proud to admit what I see in them inside me. Again, now you're going to project your values onto them and expect them to live in your values. Anytime you try to live in other people's values or expect others to live in your values, you have futility because that ain't going to happen. Just try to, when you're infatuated with a woman, the first weeks you're with a woman or men or whatever it is that people have out there, because they can be any gender today. Whatever you're infatuated with, you're going to inject their values. You're going to find yourself doing weird stuff you don't normally do the first weeks you're infatuated. Stuff you would never do because you don't want to, you fear the losing them. You don't want to lose them. So you're going to do, I mean, I think of when I was 20, I did pom-pom dancing with this hot brunette model one time. I never did pom-pom dance. I studied physics. Okay. But I was infatuated. So I didn't want to lose her. So I did what she wanted to do. And I sacrificed me for her. And eventually you build up resentment to get your life back. And the same thing when you look down on people, you sacrifice them for you. None of those judgments are authentic. Because if you're too proud to admit or too humble to admit what you see in others inside you, you're not authentic. It's when you have reflective awareness and whatever you see in others, you find in yourself and you see it to the same degree. And then you honor them for bringing to your awareness things you may have been disowning. And then when you realize nothing's missing in you, you can self-actualize your potential.
So this is so great. When we talk about success, John, what do you think of where the self-development is right now as far as setting money goals, relationship goals, as far as to achieve it in order to be happy? Is that our first step, or exactly what you're talking about is like, no. Maybe we don't actually need a specific money amount, a specific what's going to make us happy. First, it's learning how to go within ourselves and make that crystal clear.
Well, I gave up happiness. It made me too sad. The pursuit. I want you to imagine this a magnet. Okay, we got a magnet.
Yes.
And imagine that I told you that I'm going to give you $1 billion, Sean, $1 billion cash. You'd probably like that. If you can give me a half a magnet, a positive pole without a negative pole. Now, if you're dumb, which you're not, but if you were dumb and you were unintelligent, you didn't know the partial differential equations of James Clerk Maxwell and light and electromagnetism, you would actually think, I'm going to get a positive pole and I'm going to cut that magnet in half and I'm going to try to grab that positive pole. But what you would do is you'd end up with a positive negative and a positive negative, two little magnets. And you go, oh, I didn't do it fast enough. Let me cut that one in half. And you would be doing an infinitesimals of breaking this magnet down, and you would still have positive and negative as long as there's atoms there.
Right. There's
a dipole system there. So anytime you're pursuing a one-sided life, the other side is going to smack you. So I gave up the fantasy of so-called hedonistic happiness and went to Aristotle's idea of eudaimonia, which is well-being, which means that I'm embracing both sides of myself and both sides of others and both sides of life, because that I can obtain. That's obtainable. If I went to you, Sean, and I said, you're always nice, you're never mean, you're always kind, you're never cruel, you're always positive, never negative, always peaceful, never wrathful, your own bullshit meter would go off and go, nah, not exactly.
Totally.
If I said you're always mean and never nice, always cruel, never kind, always negative, never positive, always wrathful, never peaceful, your BS meter would go off again. And you go, not exactly. But if I said sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, you're immediately go, yep, that's true. So we have to set objectives, which mean neutral, instead of fantasies. And people that are most sad people I know are people looking for only one side. So if you define happiness, which I don't like to use that word, I call it well-being, wholeness, fulfillment, because happiness is only half fulfillment. Sadness is the other half. Fulfillment is embracing the two sides of life. So I gave up one-sided thinking 37 years ago. I realized that was futile. And I embraced both sides of life, because I guarantee you, when you're married to somebody, you're going to have things you like and dislike. Things you want to attract them and you want to repel them. Hug me, get away from me. I mean, it's the two sides of life. And if you can't handle both of them and all you're looking for one side, the fantasy you creates the nightmare when the other side hits. You're not prepared for life. A true objective embraces the two sides of life synchronously, simultaneously. And that's the master. So I don't pursue one-sidedness. Fulfillment is what I'm interested in. Filling my life full with both sides of my existence. I don't want to get rid of half of myself in order to love myself. I don't want to get rid of half of you to love you. And I don't want to get rid of half of life to love life.
So true. It's so true. I remember, especially when I was doing more personal training, like in fitness, when I first began, and people were like, oh, I love fitness, as though they're, trying to get on like my good side or something. Oh, I love fitness. I can do fitness, all the time. I said, oh, really? I said, great. Try doing fitness for 24 hours and then tell me how much you love fitness. You will hate it. So I totally agree with you. It is. There's both sides. But John, what I also hear you saying is there's not just this outer world, there's this inner world, but there's also this other side of human, but there's this spiritual side as well.
Well, spirituality, I've studied 3,000 different religions. I started with an encyclopedia of every known religion there was, from 50,000 people to 2 billion people. I started studying all of the writings that were dispersed by those religions as best I could around the world. And many people assume that spirituality is some sort of religious thing. But I don't want to limit spirituality. It can be that's a form, but spirituality truly is intrinsically inspiring to you. There was a gentleman who lived in Ireland, and he's climbed Mount Everest twice. The top 7 peaks of the world twice. No, 4 times Mount Everest, 2 times all the 7 peaks. He's gone and walked to the North Pole and South Pole, and he swam the entire Amazon River. He's adventurous. Okay, that's what inspires him. He gets up in the morning and he says, what's my biggest fear and how do I conquer it today? I want to walk into my fear today. That's his life. Now, that's his spirituality. My spirituality is teaching. A person that's raising a family of children, their spirituality is raising beautiful children. Another may be a politician. Another may be a mystic. Another may be a yogi. Another person may be a baseball player. Whatever inspires you, that is the fulfillment of what you value most, that is intrinsically your expression and calling in life, your real mission and purpose that you feel is what you dedicate your life to. That's your spiritual path. That's your dharmic path. And that's the awakened, enlightened state that you have access to. So we all are spiritual.
Yeah.
Can I share a story? I got to share this story. It's so good.
Love it. Of course, please.
Yeah. Okay. So this lady calls me at the seminar. She puts her hand up. She calls at me. And she says, Dr. Demartini, what do you do when you have a husband that's into materiality and he's not spiritual? I said, there is no such thing. And she goes, what do you mean there is no such thing? And her friend was there and knew her husband. Said, well, I don't know about that. I said, what do you call spiritual? Because everybody's got a different definition of spirituality. So watch out for the boxes and the little, the labels. She said, well, spirituality is like meditating and doing yoga and contemplation and reading great spiritual text and going out and doing a vision quest or this. I said, okay, well, that's your idea of what spirituality is. And you love that. And that's a valid path for your life. Great. What does your husband do? He owns an IT company. And how many employees? 200. Oh, now do you work? I asked her. No, I don't work. Oh, you don't work? Are you independently wealthy? Well, my husband works. Oh, so you can contemplate your navel and do your yoga and meditation as long as he's working? Is that what you're saying? I guess so. I said, so what? He has 200 people working. So he's helping paying taxes. He's helping jobs. He's serving people around the world, all over the world, she said. And he's making millions of dollars in the company. Yeah. And he's inspiring people in teams and inspiring people and with his services. Yeah. But you're contemplating your navel selfishly sitting on a mat somewhere and not really doing a whole lot for the world. Is that what you're saying? She goes, I guess so, but I'm getting the point you're making here. I said, he's not spiritual. He's spiritual in his path. And his highest value is creating a friggin' business. And you're getting a life that you want in your spirituality because of his. His is not less spiritual. It's just different spirituality. What inspires him and what inspires you are two different things. And where's God not? It's all the divine. Yes. It's omnipresent. Every action. And Einstein said it well. Every action, every reaction, everything that goes on is part of the divine plan. But humans get subjectively biased and box things into little pieces of good and bad and put moral hypocrisies on things and then narrow their mind instead of broaden and have the overview effect and see it's all the divine plan.
Absolutely. That oneness that, has so many infinite pieces. And you said it, the one thing that just jumped out was we're taught, we can be taught morals, but values are totally different. And what I really loved about what you just said, John, is you can have two totally different people in their calling that is totally different, and they can still interact, be loving, be connected, as long as they are in their own calling.
Yes, but the way they do it is by linking values. You ask a simple question: how specifically is my spouse's doing what they love doing, the feel that their highest value, what inspires them, what they're dedicated to? How's it helping me fulfill mine? If you can't see it, you're going to want to fix them. Right. And they want to be loved for who they are, and who they love is a reflection of their highest values. And so if you can't see how their highest value is fulfilling yours, you're going to want to fix them. You're going to want to change them. You're going to have a fantasy they're supposed to live in your values. This undermines relationships. And then you want to ask the question, how is my top 3 values, what I'm dedicated to, what inspires me most, how's it helping them fulfill theirs? If 2 people will go to dinner, order food, get a piece of paper in front of them with a pen, and ask, how is what my wife is dedicated to helping me fulfill mine? And how is my husband dedicated to fulfilling theirs? Or partner, it doesn't have to be husband and wife, but whatever the partnership is. If they do that and make the links, they won't have to fix each other. They'll appreciate each other. They'll have love for each other. And they'll realize that they're broader in their perspective and realize that everything serves. Everything can help them on that path.
That's incredible. John, is this what you help people do, is just find those values intrinsically? Is that what you would say most people are confused on when they say, I don't know who I am? Who's my authentic and true self, higher self? Is really
their higher self is an expression of their highest values. If you have an individual who has 3 kids under the age, and they're under 35, they're 3 kids, all the kids are under age 5, and their highest value is taking care of those beautiful children. If you asked them, who are you ontologically, they'll say, I'm a mother. Now, if they have a husband or partner, and the husband's highest values is being an entrepreneur, running business, which I hope he does, because otherwise the kids are not going to have any income. And even though he has 3 kids, if you asked him, who are you? He'll say, I'm an entrepreneur. Our identity revolves around what we value most. And there's a way of identifying it. On my website, drdemartini.com, there's a complimentary, free, private value determination process. It takes about 30 minutes of your time, but I'm absolutely certain if they take the time to do that, it will be an eye-opener. Because I've been doing it 44 years. I've been dealing with value determinations. And what's on there is gold. Because most people have an idea what they think it is, but I guarantee it's not. I've been doing thousands of these. And most people don't know what they're really committed to. If I ask people, how many of you want to be financially independent? Everybody put their hand up.
Yep.
But if I look at how many are, the hands go down. And that's because they confuse financial independence with lifestyles of the rich and famous, buying consumables that depreciate in value instead of actually buying assets and being patient and thinking long-term, not immediate gratifying, and letting the money compound through the great 8th wonder of the world, compound interest. And those are the people that have a value on that, they become wealthy. The majority of people spend money and live through vicariously through other people's brands and become broke and indebted. And anytime you separate pain from pleasure by using a credit card, you buy things of pleasure and then you got to pay later and separate pain and pleasure, the higher the probability of being an addictive consumer.
Absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. Well, and you mentioned something too, which is the identity and linking that with our lifestyle. And so, one of the things that I talk about with my group that you're in front of right now is there's a difference between life and life purpose and our lifestyle. And sometimes we have to actually make a change to our lifestyle to become more connected to what our life purpose is and how life really wants to shift through us in order to achieve real success with balance, harmony. Would you agree with that?
Well, because everybody has a hierarchy of values, if they prioritize their life and fill their day with the highest priority actions that inspire them, their day doesn't fill up with low priority distractions that don't. And they're less likely to be infiltrated by other projections of other people's values who are opportunists trying to get their attention and distract them. Think about a day when you have something really, really meaningful and important to do, and you're prioritizing, you got an agenda and you're on it, you're knocking it off and priority as you go. You feel on top of the world, you're more resilient and adaptable, you're more empowered, and it's easy to say, no, I've got a high priority thing to do, not now. If you live that way, you'll automatically build momentum. But if you don't have something that's agenda in advance, if you don't design your life and you live just vicariously through other people all the time and fearing the rejection of them, you're going to have people bombard you with all kinds of expectations and projections and how you're to be and what you need to do. And then you're going to scatter the day, and then you're going to be doing low priority things, which awakens your amygdala. And that's when you go into debauchery and immediate gratification mode. And that doesn't get you wealth. That doesn't get you, what that does is get you into pride and projection of your values on them or minimization compared to others. And that's a disempowered state. So the disempowered state is a feedback to you to let you know you're not living by priority. I mean, I've been teaching people how to live by priority, and the people that follow it and stick to it, they just keep talking off, just take off. And the people that are coming up with excuses of why they can't get things done is because they are frightened of the rejection of other people's expectations. And what's interesting is the very people that expect you and criticize you, if you stay focused on what it is that is priority, they are the people that eventually come back and thank you. You just got to be patient. To be great is to be misunderstood, as Emerson says. And envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. Einstein said, my contempt for authority is what made me one. He said no to outside authorities and went inside and went and trusted himself. If you trust other people more than you trust yourself, you're probably not living congruently. Because when you're living congruently, you're the master of your captain of your fate. So I'm a firm believer of identifying what your hierarchy of values are, prioritizing your daily actions, delegating lower priority things, and get on to do the highest priority thing in a way that serves people in a sustainable way that builds fair exchange and become fortunate and freed and give job opportunities and grow and watch what happens. I've trained people for 40 years now in this, and it's really amazing what happens when people start doing it.
I love this. I love this. This is so great. And again, thank you. I really appreciate your time. And you know, here's a question that I get asked is, do our values change, or does our perspective end up changing as we grow? Like when I picture an acorn in one phase of life becoming an oak tree, there's several phases that it's going to go through, and it's going to change, and it's going to think different. It's going to face different emotions and different outside challenges. But do our true values change?
Yes. I wanted to play ball from age 3 to 13. I wanted to surf from age 9 to 18. And I transitioned to surfing. And then from 18, I just wanted to learn and teach. And I've been doing that 50 years almost. And after that, the next one is going to be international sex symbol. That's the fantasy. I'm joking. That's just a joke. There's no evidence of that. But I just put that as. But you know what's interesting is our voids drive our values. And our voids are everything we're too proud or too humble to admit that we see in others inside ourselves. So let's say you look down on somebody and resent them, and you're conscious of the downside and unconscious of the upside. And what happens, you puff yourself up looking down on them, go, oh, I'm too proud to admit that I do that. And that's not you. That's an inauthentic persona you're wearing, looking down on somebody. Because the truth is, you can't resent somebody on the outside unless they're reminding you of something you feel ashamed of on the inside. It's a reflection of you. That's why you're reacting to them. And then when you admire somebody, you put them on a pedestal. You're conscious of the upsides, unconscious of the downsides. And now you minimize yourself relative to this person you admire. The moment you do, you're not authentic. You're minimizing. Anytime you exaggerate or minimize or go pride or shame, you're not being you. You just lost your authenticity. And everybody wants to be loved for who they are. But how are you going to be loved for who you are when you're not being who you are? So if you exaggerate somebody or minimize somebody, infatuate or resent, that will occupy space and time in your mind and create noise in the brain. And you won't even sleep at night if it's extreme. And you lose your identity. And those create voids because you're too humble or too proud to admit what you see in others inside you. And those voids want to be fulfilled. And you want to discover the wholeness of you, that nothing's missing you. You are both the hero and the villain, the saint and the sinner. You got it all. Nothing's missing. At the level of the essence of the soul, nothing's missing in you. At the level of the existence of your senses, things appear to be missing, but they're not missing. But you're too proud or too humble to admit you have it. And those voids determine your values, and those values are what you're trying to fulfill. And so as you dissolve your judgments and start doing what you love, your life goes from potential to actual.
Wow, that's amazing. John, would you say that there are some values or principles that you can share that relate or act as like pylons or buoys to help people begin to go within? Is there certain values that are, universal to people that would help them if they are sort of on their rock bottom?
I've had the opportunity to study about 400 texts on morals and ethics and values. And scholars through the ages have debated whether or not there's a universal value. I've seen no evidence of it other than the synthesis and synchronicity of all complementary opposites. That's the only value. It transcends value. Kohlberg in his moral development states that transcendence is the ultimate state. So anytime we think something's good, there'll be somebody that thinks it's bad. And there's a law called the law of heuristic escalation, says that whenever somebody tries to promote something, the antiparticle will appear. Pro-life, pro-abortion, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, right? Pro-guns, anti-guns, pro-this, anti-that, pro-Ukraine, anti-Ukraine kind of thing. This is part of it. And this law shows, just like in a family, if you look carefully, if you got brothers or sisters, you'll see that you have an antiparticle brother and sister. They're different than you. They're the opposite of you. And the summation of all the values in the family cancel each other. And the summation of all the values in society cancel each other. There's always a yin and a yang, always a pair of opposites. And therefore, no one thing can be a universal value. The other is also a value. in the biblical writing, there's a gentleman who named William Burr, who wrote a book, Contradictions of the Bible, showing that whatever was said in the Bible, the exact opposite is said. And he pulled it all out. And there's about 300 different examples. And that way, people of different values could relate to that and pull out what they wanted out of that book to use it for their advantage. But ultimately, the summation of all the values in society makes love. Love is a synthesis and synchronous of complementary opposite. So not the romantic love, not the infatuation, not the blindness of, seeing only the highs and not the lows, but the love where you can embrace all of it. The synthesis and synchronicity of complementary opposites. That's the most universal state. And I've spent many decades helping people reach that awareness and realize where they're untouched. Because as long as they're infatuated with something, it's going to occupy space and time in their mind, and it's going to be attachment. They're going to be run by it. And if as long as you're resentful, it's going to be there. The subconscious mind stores all infatuation, resentments. The superconscious mind stores all love. And Empedocles, a 6th century philosopher, beautifully described this. He said, the universe is made out of love and strife. When all the 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth, are joined together, you have love. And when they're separated, you get strife. And people who judge live in strife, and people who love live in integrated pairs of opposites. That's the yin and yang, that's the Tao, that's the middle path, or whatever you want to call it in the philosophies of the world. It's the dialectic. It's what your physiology, it's where we have the greatest resilience and adaptability when our autonomic systems are joined. It's synchronicity when we have the conscious and unconscious joined. All pairs of opposites are expressed through this thing we could call love. And so I think that's the most universal expression we have out of all my studies that I've seen.
Wow. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. It all comes back to love. All comes back to that oneness. We can utilize everything that's showing up in our life. It's not a mistake. And
I went 37 or 8 years ago. I noticed that I was reacting to certain people. And I noticed, just like it was stated, when I point my finger at them and judge them, I had 3 pointing back at me. So I started to look at carefully what I was saying to people and what I was emphasizing, what I was reacting to and judging. And I would go home that night and look at who I judged and what I judge and look at where do I demonstrate to. I found out that I was demonstrating everything I judged in them. And it was reminding me of something I was judging in myself, and therefore I was judging them. But I did something else. I went to the Oxford Dictionary, the largest dictionary I could find, thin paper, small print, massive dictionary. And I went and circled and underlined every known human behavioral trait you can find. 4,628 traits out of there I picked out. And then I went and wrote out the name, the initials of the most expressed, who expressed that trait to the fullest that I could think of that I knew. So anger or kindness or sweetness or bitterness or aggression or whatever it may be. And now, who do I know is the most aggressive? Who do I know that's most peaceful? And who do I know that's most considerate or something? And I wrote their names out there. And then I went in my life and I looked at, where do I display that trait as much as I see in that person? And I dug and dug and dug and dug. And I found out that I had every one of those 4,628 traits. Nothing was missing in me. When you can embrace all parts of yourself and not have to get rid of any part of yourself or fantasize about improving and getting only one side, when you love both sides of your magnet, you get to love yourself and get to master your life. Because if any hero side or any villain side you can't own inside you is somebody you're going to project onto others and get caught in judgment, and they're going to distract you from your presence.
That's absolutely phenomenal. Would you say that is where what healing is, the trauma, the wounds? I know these are popular words, and it's where we're at in society today. But this is really what you're talking about. How to heal our wounds and our traumas is really.
I'd change the word. There are no wounds and traumas, except in the human mind's perception.
Love it.
Let me share a story. This is a good story.
Yes, please.
So I had a gentleman that called me, who was driving down the highway, in Africa who had a big company. He was very, wealthy. And driving down the highway, 4 cars came around him, surrounded his car, stopped, froze his car, beat out the windows, opened up his door, grabbed him, put a sack over his head, stuck him in the trunk, and drove him for 5 to 6 hours into the middle of nowhere and said, you now owe us millions of dollars if you want to live, and we'll kill you and your family. Now, most people would probably call that trauma, right? That'd be classified typically on TV, psychologists, everybody. That's a pretty traumatic event. So he comes to me and he's under post-traumatic stress, label, and he's under therapy now for months. Right. So somebody said, go talk to John. He'll dissolve this thing. So I said, go to the moment. I got in there and I said, go to the moment when you felt the trauma. He says, when I got in the car and got in the trunk, I really had to pee. And I was sitting there for 5.5 hours and I was in claustrophobic and I was in darkness and I couldn't get heard and I didn't know where I was going and everything else. And I was thinking they're going to kill me. And that was absolutely torture. I said, good, let's break that frame by frame down and let's go back to that. And then in that moment, I asked him, where was the opposite? You're in a dark thing. You couldn't see anything. Where was the light? He said, wow, when I get down to that moment, I actually saw myself running through a field in a very sunny environment with my family, holding hands. He says, I didn't know that was in my mind. I said, the way the brain works, when you're under this so-called trauma, it goes into a freeze response, and freeze causes dissociation, and the dissociation creates a composite opposite anti-memory to counterbalance it, to keep the brain stable. So in that moment of trauma and torture, there's ecstasy, but you didn't see it. And therefore you held on to the story and ran the story as a victim of history. So I went in there and I took that story, and frame by frame by frame, we found the pairs of opposites. And that calmed down the torture. And all of a sudden he was like going, so I was actually in torture and ecstasy at the same moment. I said, yeah. Now, let me ask this. What was the benefit of this event? He says, benefit? Yeah, what's the benefit? There's no drawbacks without benefits. What's the other side? You can't have a magnet with one side. What's the upsides to it? Totally. He said, I don't know. I said, look again. If you stop looking, you will never find it. You'll label it a trauma all your life, and then you'll store it, and you'll be living in a fear of those things happening. And then the outside world will run you. What's the benefit? He went blank. I said, so how did it help you in your relationship? How did it help you in your family? How did it help you in business? Oh, well, I can tell you what, when I finally was set free and we paid the ransom, I've never been closer to my family in my life. And he got tears in his eyes. And my wife was telling me that you're driving yourself, you're going to kill yourself. And if you don't come home and see the family, you're going to miss out on the family. And I'm now with the family. That event brought me into my family, and I'm closer to my family I've ever been in, my wife and kids. And he got tears in his eyes. I said, great. What's the next benefit? He said, well, when I was gone 5 to 6 weeks, before I was there, before that happened, I was pushing the company and driving people and pushing people and having to do everything. And I was robbing them of their own accountabilities. And I was pushing and driving and robbing them of them taking command. When I was there in the 5 weeks away, 6 weeks away, they had to rise up and take over. And my business made more money that month, those 5 weeks, than when I'm there. And right now, all those people have risen and taken on roles of leadership that I was hoping to get to, but I was in the way. Right now, I'm at home with my family, making more money than I ever did before. He says, I said, well, did you thank the guys that robbed you and ransomed you? And he goes, no. Well, right now, I think about it. I said, how much did they ransom? He said, 10 million. I said, how much have you made since then? He said, that month I made more than 10 million.
Oh my gosh.
I said, so what you're saying is that these guys are consultants using incredible strategies to get you to actually do the things that you say you're wanting to do, like be close to your family and actually have a business that's delegated, and so you can be a leader that's a visionary instead of a doer? He goes, yeah. He says, and guess what? Since that, I didn't get to eat much for those 5 to 6 weeks. I lost all the weight. I was a time bomb with heart problems. My heart's functioning again. I'm working out. I'm drinking juices. I'm now health oriented. My wife is influencing me. and I'm spending time with the kids, and we've gone on vacations now. I've never had so much appreciation and love for them. I said, so you're now waking up what you're feeling as a new way of relations with your wife and family, and your business is delegated and it's efficient and you're making more money. He said, the way you're asking me these questions, I'm almost feeling like I want to thank these guys. I said, keep going. And we kept going until he bawled in tears of gratitude. And I said, now, I want you to know something. It is not what happens to you in life. It's your perception, decisions, and actions. And the way you change your perception is by asking new questions and become conscious of unconscious information. Now you're conscious of the information you overlooked at that moment. You're aware that you actually were close to your family and your vision. And you're now living the goals that you set. And now, let me ask you this. If that hadn't happened, what would have been the drawback? He said, I might have been divorced. I would have had half my money taken away, and I possibly would have caused myself a heart attack. I said, did these people help you in your life? So his perspective was no longer tragic. His perspective is there was a higher order in the chaos, and things were on the way, not in the way. And that's how you see life. Otherwise, you become victim of history, and you go to therapy and play in your subconscious mind and stay stuck all your life.
Oh my goodness, John. Thank you so much. Wow. That is an incredible way to, just summarize and wrap this all up. The trauma, all these labels, all these boxes, we're doing it and we can free ourselves. And, what you're talking about, absolutely genius.
There's nothing your mortal body can experience that your mortal soul can't love. Your mortal soul is the state of unconditional love when you're authentic, doing what you love, inspired intrinsically. That state is resilient, adaptable, and sees both sides of things and doesn't live in the idea of a seek and avoid. They live in a value of oversight, not living underneath things, but on top of things.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. John, where can we follow more about what you're doing? Do you have anything coming up? Any programs? Is there any links that we can give everyone to flood to you and check out all that you're doing?
That's the easiest way to get a hold or reach or find out what I'm doing is go on my website. Just drdemartini.com, DRDEMARTINI.com. They can do the value determination process to determine what they value. They can go on there and see my show. They can go on and there's thousands of interviews, literally interviews for many, many years on all different topics. So they could go on there, they could find out when we're doing things live. It's an educational website. There's no way you can go on there and watch the YouTubes and watch the videos and watch and read all the articles and stuff without having an education. You just go and pick what it is that resonates with you. But that's the best place, just drdemartini.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time today. That was absolutely amazing. And wow. I know that everyone here is just love that. So again, thank you so much for your time, John. Amazing.
Thank you for your patience getting on today. We had a little glitch, but we're back in the game. But so thank you very much. I really appreciate that, and thank you for the great questions and what you're doing and being of service to people. Thank you.
Thank you, John.